Hey guys, happy sip day.
Happy sip day.
That's right.
How are you guys feeling today?
Feeling good. Coffee in
There.
hand, sipping.
Ready to go? So what are we talking about this week, guys?
Just kind of wanted to go over IRA contributions. There sometimes is a little bit of confusion whether or not you can contribute to an IRA. So it's who can contribute to an IRA and when can you not, and then the separate part about that is whether or not the contribution is deductible.
Right.
So anybody can contribute to an IRA up to their level of earned income limited to $7,000 in 2024, or if you're under age 50, or $8,000 if you're age 50 or over by the December 31st of that year. So in the year that you turn December 50, whether you're 50 or not during that year, it qualifies you for an additional $1,000 contribution. So everybody can contribute to an IRA as so long as they have earned income, subject to the either seven or $8,000 contribution limit. IRA contributions are tax deductible under certain circumstances. So
Right.
the three things that would affect your contribution eligibility is whether or not you are participating in an employer-sponsored retirement plan, such as a 401k, whether your spouse is participating in a retirement contribution plan sponsored by their employer, like a 401k, and then what your level of income is. So if you do not participate and your spouse does not participate in an employer sponsored retirement plan, you have full deductibility of your contributions that go in. So you do not pay tax on your IRA contributions at all if you or your spouse does not participate in an employer sponsored retirement plan.
Right. And that's no matter what income you earn, as long as it's above the limit, you can make the contribution, and then when you file your tax return, you can deduct it off of your taxable income. So that's how you don't pay taxes on that contribution.
Yeah. Now, if you or your spouse do participate in an employer-sponsored retirement plan, you can still make a contribution, but you may not get a tax deduction for the contribution that you make. So, if if you are participating in an employer-sponsored retirement plan and your income, as defined by your modified adjusted gross income, is below $77,000, you can get a full deduction for the contribution that you made. If it's between $77,000 and $87,000, then you can get a partial deduction and then no deduction after that. But this is actually that's for single tax filers. So
Yep.
um, the spousal limits, if you're married, then and you're filing jointly, that range is from 123 to $143,000. So if you're married and you are and your spouse are participating in an employer-sponsored retirement plan, $123,000 is the beginning of the phase out, and then 143 is the top. But then if you are participating, if you are not participating in an employer sponsored retirement plan, but your spouse is, then it's a little bit higher of a limit. Whereas you can have income between 220 and $240,000. Yeah, that's that phase out range. So under 220, full deductibility; above 240, zero deductibility; a phase out in between, or a lesser amount in between. So again, anybody can make an IRA contribution, but the deductibility depends on whether or not you participate in an employer-sponsored retirement plan or if your spouse does, and then those income limits vary for what that is. And that's the modified adjusted gross income. So this is the level of income that you have before any deductions. And I believe in the modified part, some of the foreign income, it gets added back if you happen to have
Yep.
that. which you may not know it depending on the type of investments that you have in your taxable investment account. Um,
Right, some modified, some possible muni bond, and some other interests. So
yeah,
it's a more complicated calculation to get the MAGI, modified adjusted gross income. But the important thing to remember is this is before you get your standard deduction
yeah, and so I would
or
use
itemized.
the adjusted gross income as kind of your starting point to go through that. Um, so whether or not you get the deduction or not, it still may make sense to make that contribution because non-deductible contributions, although you don't get the tax deduction for making the contribution, you actually any of the investment growth is tax deferred on that contribution that you make. So there is still a tax benefit in doing so. But you do want to make sure that you file a Form 8606 in the year that you make that contribution. That's an IRS Form 8606. And the reason being is that they keep track of your principal amount that you
Mhm.
have contributed because you didn't get that tax deduction. So they keep track of how much your contribution was. So then when you make the distribution, all of your distribution isn't fully taxable like it would be with a fully pre-tax IRA contribution. Another reason to make a non-deductible IRA contribution is if you do not have any other IRA assets, and that's either in a traditional IRA or a SEP IRA or a simple IRA. If you don't have any other IRA assets, you can make that non-deductible contribution and then convert it tax-free into a Roth IRA, which if you are hitting the IRA eligibility limit where you're not allowed to make any Roth IRA contribution, then you can make a non-deductible IRA contribution, then convert it tax-free to a Roth, which is effectively the same as doing a Roth contribution, but there's an added step that you need to make.
Yep, I had a
And
step,
what
and you still
would
have
be the
to do that
limit? Because
form.
you did just mention a limit. What would be the limit so that they can't do the Roth conversion?
Yes. So
So
go ahead, Dan.
yeah, so the Roth conversion doesn't have a limit, but the Roth contribution does. So it's between 230,000 and 240,000 for a Roth contribution. So
That's
below
married filing.
230, you can do the
If you're
full.
married filing jointly,
Yes.
if you're single, it's between 146,000, 161,000.
Yep. So different limits based on how you file. And if you're above that, that's when you come into that non-deductible backdoor Roth. And what we like to see is if you are below that 230, you do participate in a plan at work. So that, and then you're above that limit for getting the deductible contribution in IRA, then you can just make directly to the Roth, get that tax-free money, build up that tax-free bucket, so that you can have that to rely on later on in life and diversify your tax assets.
Okay, I feel like that about sums it up.
Yeah, if you have any questions about IRA contribution and deductibility, we're here.
Thank you for joining us on this week's Weekly Sip.
All right, take
Thanks,
care.
guys.